We are delighted this morning in this week of gratitude and leadership to welcome Mindy Gordon to Congregation Shaarey Zedek. Mindy is one of the outstanding leaders of conservative Judaism, as she is the director of the entire North America for conservative Judaism, except, I think, for California and New York. Pretty much, right? The region that she leads really is everything in between California and New York, which very much includes Michigan. So we have been blessed by Mindy's wisdom and advice, her continued encouragement and leadership over these many years. And just a few years ago, now is probably more than that, I've lost track of time, Mindy officially became part of the Shaarey Zedek family when she married into the Indenbaum clan. And so if you've married the Indenbaums, you're definitely part of the Shaarey Zedek family. So Mindy, we are delighted to welcome you here to Congregation Shaarey Zedek this morning, and thank you for everything you do.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Rabbi, for inviting me. Shabbat Shalom. And yes, I am the synagogue consultant for the Central District, which, as I love to say, goes from Pittsburgh to Denver, the Twin Cities to Mexico City. So very much the Midwest and beyond. So I was very honored to have been asked to give the Dvar Torah today. I have many fond personal connections to this bima. The first time I was here was actually in 1971 or 1972 when I came as part of a Kadima convention. Kadima was then called Bat Mitzvah and Tefillin Club. And it was a Shabbat exchange with my home synagogue, North Suburban Synagogue Beth El in Highland Park, Illinois. Fast forward, as the rabbi mentioned, to 2015 when I was last on this bima next to the chuppah where my son Matt married Shoshana Indenbaum. Very fitting for today's parsha, Toldot. Generations. My most recent connection is that your immediate past president, Jerry Fishman, has just been installed as the chair of the Central District Council. This means that she and I get to continue to build upon the close relationship we have established during our last 2 years of weekly calls when she was the chair-elect. I was asked to speak about USCJ, United Synagogue of Conservative Judaism, and the conservative movement, but I wanted to tie it into today's parsha. I didn't want deception to be the message, so I was reading various sources looking for inspiration, and I came to the scholar Aviva Zornberg and her book, Genesis, The Beginning of Desire. She writes about various aspects of the parsha, but the one that I think is the most applicable is the subchapter called Impersonation and Authenticity. Who are we? The theme of who someone is a big one in today's parsha. When the twins Jacob and Esau are struggling in her womb, Rebekah says, Lama ze anochi? Why this am I? Or why is this me? And when Isaac asks Jacob, who are you? He answers, I am Esau, your firstborn, even though obviously technically that is not true. And then when he is asked again, are you really my son Esau? He responds just, Ani, I am, without further elaboration. Attempts at conservative movement self-definition have long been complicated by the fact that the conservative movement has presented itself as standing in the center between orthodoxy and reform. It has been defined as much by what it is not as by what it is. Conservative Judaism is halakhically distinct from orthodoxy and reform. Unlike the reform movement, it views the halakha as binding, but it differs from orthodoxy both in the ways and whys and hows of its halakha. Rabbi Professor David Galinkin discusses this in depth in an article on the Rabbinical Assembly website about Responsa for Today, from which I learned much of the following information. Both Orthodox and conservative Judaism are committed to the observance of halakha. However, there are many differences between these approaches. In order to understand the differences, we must address two basic questions. Why observe halakha, and how do rabbis interpret halakha? The standard Orthodox approach to why observe halakha is quite simple. We must observe the commandments because they are divine in origin. They were given to us in the Torah at Mount Sinai by God, God's self. And what about all the laws that were added by the rabbis throughout the ages? According to the fundamentalist approach, they too were given at Mount Sinai. Belief in revelation at Sinai is not what motivates most conservative Jews to undertake a commitment to the mitzvot that they chose to perform. They observe halakha, rather, for a combination of the following 6 reasons. The first approach says that halakha is the way that the Jewish people throughout generations understood God's revelation at Mount Sinai and interpreted it. A Jew who observes mitzvot fulfills the way the collective people of Israel have understood God's will for 3,000 years. The most famous advocate of this point of view was Professor Solomon Schechter, the founder of the conservative movement. The second approach to observance stresses the partnership of God and humankind. The Torah and the mitzvot express the eternal brit or covenant made between God and the Jewish people. The covenant with God was not a one-shot deal. It is renewed in every generation. The creator of the universe seeks human assistance in completing the work of creation. You and I can make it better. Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, who spent much of his career at the Jewish Theological Seminary, reflects this concept in his two best-known books, Man is Not Alone and God in Search of Man. The third approach states that mitzvot lead us to holiness. They sanctify our lives and bring us closer to God. This approach is reflected in the standard formula of blessings recited over mitzvot, such as Shabbat and Hanukkah candles, lulav, tefillin, and talit. Asher kiddishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, who has sanctified us with mitzvot and commanded us. The mitzvot do sanctify our lives. The mundane becomes special, and the profane becomes holy. Shabbat and festivals sanctify time. Blessings and kashrut sanctify our meals, and the wedding ceremony sanctifies marriage. Number 4, halakha is the cement which binds together the scattered bricks of the Jewish people. Without this cement, the Jewish people would have long ago disintegrated. The mitzvot tie every Jew in the world to every other Jew in the world. Over the years, I have prayed in synagogues all over the world, and I've always been struck by the fact that 90% of the services are identical, no matter where you go. Number 5, following halakha stresses the historical continuity of the Jewish people. The mitzvot are the chain which bind us and our children to our ancestors and the history of our people. Without them, we would lose our continuity and we would feel like orphans in history. The sixth approach is extremely pragmatic. The greatest threat to the survival of Jewish people today is assimilation. For thousands of years, the mitzvot have protected the Jewish people from these threats and ensured Jewish continuity. The famous Zionist thinker Achad Ha'am said, "More than the Jewish people has preserved the Shabbat has preserved the Jews." Our view of the mitzvot is a combination of freedom and responsibility, autonomy and obligation, the interpretations of previous generations, and the innovations contributed by our own generation. This partnership, according to conservative Judaism, is essential to extending the way of the Torah into the future. Speaking of partnership, at USCJ, our first priority is to partner with our member congregations in their striving for excellence, encouraging them to challenge themselves in a continuous process of self-improvement, to cultivate effective change-oriented leadership, to provide engaging prayer, inspiring learning, and spiritual development. Our approach is rooted in the idea that Judaism grows within us, that we are guided by process, and that there is beauty in the balance. Conservative Judaism is filled with a wide range of experiences and ideas, and we like it that way. We live at the intersection of many worlds. We understand that holding the tension between extremes can be a choice, a worldview, a badge of honor. Conservative Judaism strives to meet people where they are, applying a unique understanding of Torah, mitzvot, and tradition to encourage each individual in their search for balance. In a world that is increasingly moving towards extremes, we embrace tradition and modernity, particularism and universalism, ideals and lived experience, individuality and community. We strive to create and strengthen relationships with one another, with the Jewish people, with the state of Israel, and with God. We strive to make Jewish living and tradition hopeful, festive, relevant, and accessible. We emphasize both ritual and ethical mitzvot and pursue authentic Jewish experience through Torah study, prayer, and acts of justice and kindness. USCJ's tagline is "Seek Meaning Together." We seek meaning in three main ways: by belonging, creating experiences to build and connect with joyful, inclusive, and empowering communities; by becoming, helping each person created in God's image reach their full potential, and by experiencing, celebrating and reflecting on life's milestones and the rhythm of each year's seasons, celebrations, and sorrows. We can be frustrated that people are not always turning to our synagogues, or we can ask what we can do to help people become, belong, experience, and find meaning. Here are some of the ways that Rabbi Jacob Blumenthal, the CEO of the USCJ and the RA, proposes that we do that. Number one, meet Jews where they are. We need to engage Jews at home, in parks, in coffee shops, as well as online. Though we have poured love and thought into our buildings, we must not allow property lines to be the boundaries of organized Jewish life. Number two, focus on relationships. We need to use an engagement model that builds relationships and networks one person at a time, first discovering what people want and need, and then empowering them to create meaningful experiences. Instead of providing ready-made programs, we must first facilitate the connection and community that our people are seeking. Number three, provide individual services. Many newly successful companies tailor their products for each customer using data to anticipate trends and individual expectations. From eyeglasses to clothing to vacations, there is no longer a need to settle for something generic when you can have something made exactly to your personal specifications. Clearly, our institutions must catch up by refocusing on our values, honestly assessing our strengths, and then developing a comprehensive range of customized experiences beyond traditional life cycle rituals. Lastly, embrace diversity. The Jewish community is diverse, and we must adjust our self-conception and our planning accordingly. We are a people of different racial backgrounds, sexual and gender identities, family compositions, physical and cognitive abilities, economic statuses, and more. Our members also express their Judaism in a variety of ways. If our communities are to be successful, we must do more than acknowledge this. We must think expansively about our community as a whole and ensure that we are engaging everyone where they are and as they are. USCJ has been working on this last point, the diversity, with two of our new specialists, Dr. Karen McGinnity, who consults with rabbis and congregations on interfaith inclusion, and Julianne Rollins-Rishon, our racial justice specialist. Until 7 months ago, our movement had no online resource to teach about our approach to Jewish life. We had resources for rabbis, educators, and cantors, but no space where, if you had a question, say, about Shabbat, you could go for a conservative answer. So now we have developed a website, www.exploringjudaism.org, which you should definitely check out. Our conservative movement has much to be proud of. Thriving congregations like Congregation Shaarey Zedek and another 560 across North America. But our challenge isn't to think about only how we will preserve synagogues or synagogue life. It's to think about how we help people become, belong, and find meaning. It's to put people first, to help Jewish practice evolve to meet their needs, and to make sure we stop expecting them to find us, and for us to find them where they are physically and spiritually. In the words of the former chancellor of JTS, Arnie Eisen, quote, "Many of us still benefit from the current structures and must find the courage to embrace transformation, even if that means sacrificing what we have come to love. If we are able to acknowledge that demographics, technology, and the expectations of our people have shifted, we can then rise to meet the moment and shape or reshape the movement's future accordingly." End of quote. Fortunately, the conservative movement has shifted before, and we can do it again. Our movement has always stood for maintaining tradition while embracing change. That is the essence of conservative Judaism. Now, if we want our values to endure, we must once again change our structures to meet the needs of today's and tomorrow's American Jews. Going back to today's Parsha, I hope my words helped you answer the question, who am I, or who are we, a little better. The answer is not stagnant and changes from day to day and generation to generation. Shabbat Shalom, and go blue.
Thank you very much, Mindy, for your beautiful words of Torah this morning, and most certainly for your leadership and your hard work for our people. And I know how blessed you are to be able to work with Jerry Fishman, and so just enjoy every minute of it. It's truly something to cherish. Oh, yeah, I should call.